I will not crash the economy. It won't trigger mass layoffs overnight. It won't cause riots. It won't even feel like a crisis at first. That's why it's dangerous, because the most powerful economic changes don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, then feel obvious in hindsight. And AI is doing exactly that. Most people are watching for the wrong signal. They're waiting for job losses. They're waiting for unemployment spikes. They're waiting for headlines that say AI replaced millions. That headline's never coming. Because AI doesn't break the economy by destroying jobs. It breaks the economy by changing who matters. And that shift is already underway. Let's start by dismantling the fear almost everyone has. The fear is I will take my job. That fear is understandable. It's also incomplete, because losing your job is not the most likely outcome. The more common outcome is worse. You keep your job, you keep working, you even become more productive, but your leverage disappears. And when leverage disappears, everything else follows. Wages stop growing, opportunities narrow, negotiation power collapses, not dramatically. Gradually, this is how economies hollow out, not through destruction. Think about taxi drivers when GPS became universal. Most of them didn't lose their jobs overnight. They still drove cars. They still picked up passengers, but something important changed. They stopped being special. Knowing the city used to be an advantage. Routes, shortcuts, traffic patterns. That knowledge had value. GPS erased it. The job remained. The leverage didn't. AI is doing the same thing across the economy. Not removing roles. Removing advantages. Now, here's the first rehook you need to understand. Most people will not be replaced by AI. They will be replaced by people using AI. And that replacement won't look like displacement. It will look like compression. Same job, more output, fewer people needed. That's the mechanism, and it's already visible. You didn't lose your job, but the team didn't grow. You didn't get fired, but the raise didn't come. You became more efficient, and the company stopped hiring around you. That's AI at work. Quietly, now let's explain why this matters more than layoffs. Layoffs are obvious. They create outrage, they force intervention, but compression is invisible, and invisible change goes unchallenged. If a company lays off 30% of its staff, everyone notices. If a company freezes hiring for 3 years while output rises, no one panics. But the outcome is the same. Fewer people sharing the value created. This is the core of the problem. AI doesn't reduce work. It reduces the need to pay for work. And once you understand that, the rest of the story becomes unavoidable. Let's use another analogy. Imagine a factory. Before automation, output depended on labor. More workers meant more production. Wages had leverage. Then machines arrived. Output doubled. Same workers, same hours. Who benefited? Not the workers, the owners. AI is that factory. Everywhere. In offices, in design, in writing, in analysis, in coordination. Anywhere information is processed, AI compresses labor value. Now, here's where most people misunderstand what's happening. They assume productivity gains always lead to higher wages. That used to be true when labor was scarce, when skills were hard to replace, when coordination was slow. AI breaks all three. It makes skills replicable. It makes coordination instant. It makes output abundant. And abundance destroys bargaining power. Not because companies are evil, because incentives change. If one person can do the work of 3, the work is no longer scarce. And scarcity is what gives labor power. Here's a concrete example. You learned the new tools. You adapted early. You became faster, more efficient. You delivered more. And at first, it felt good. You were praised, relied upon. Then something subtle happened. The company didn't hire the 2 people it planned to. Your workload stayed manageable, but your replacement value dropped. You didn't become more important. You became sufficient. And sufficient is not powerful. That's the quiet shift AI introduces. Now, let's rehook this again. This is why unemployment numbers stay low. People are working, they're just not progressing. They're running faster on the same treadmill, and the treadmill isn't broken. It's optimized. Now let's talk about why no one is stopping this. Because that's another misconception. People assume someone will intervene. Governments, unions, regulators. But intervention only happens when pain is obvious. AI's impact is subtle. Companies love it because productivity rises. Governments love it because output rises. Consumers love it because prices fall or services improve. Everyone wins except labor, and labor loses quietly. No villain is required. No conspiracy is needed. This happens because incentives align. Now, here's another analogy that makes this clear. Think about email. Email didn't eliminate work. It multiplied it. People worked faster, responded quicker, handled more. Did they get paid more? No. Expectations changed. AI is email on steroids. Now, let's talk about who feels this first. It's not factory workers. It's not entry-level jobs. It's the middle, the people whose value came from coordination, synthesis, and analysis. Managers, analysts, consultants, designers, knowledge workers, the people who connected dots. AI connects dots instantly. Here's another human example. You weren't fired. Your title stayed, but your influence shrank. Decisions happen faster upstream. Your role shifted from deciding to execute. You didn't lose income. You lost proximity to power, and proximity to power is where leverage lives. This is why the middle hollows out before the bottom collapses. The bottom still does physical work. The top owns systems. The middle gets bypassed. Think of an elevator. The top floor is ownership. The bottom floor is execution. The middle floors used to matter. I skips them. That's the structural change. Now, here's another rehook. Most people won't realize this is happening until years pass and nothing improves. They'll say things like, I'm working harder than ever. I'm more productive than ever, but I'm not moving forward. That's not a personal failure. It's an economic shift. Now let's pause and ask the most important question. If AI is compressing labor value, what do people who see this early actually do? Not in theory, in practice, because some people already adjusted and they didn't do what you'd expect. They didn't try to outwork AI. They didn't try to become the best prompt engineer. They didn't chase every new tool. They changed where they sat in the system. But before we get there, we need one more reframe. The danger is not AI itself. The danger is dependency. Dependency on selling time, dependency on being replaceable, dependency on roles that scale poorly against machines. And once you see that, the strategy shifts. In the next part, we're going to look at what people who adapted actually did differently, how they repositioned away from pure output, how they moved closer to decisions instead of execution, and how they avoided the two mistakes that destroyed everyone else. Because AI doesn't make people poor. It makes them optional. And optional is a dangerous place to be. Subscribe and like, and let's continue. Once people accepted that AI wasn't coming for their jobs, but for their leverage behavior split fast, most people reacted the same way they always do. They worked harder, they learned more tools, they optimized work, they tried to become indispensable through output, and for a while it worked. They were praised, they were relied on, they were efficient. But efficiency is not power. Efficiency is compliance, and AI rewards compliance until it no longer needs it. The people who adapted early saw this before it became obvious. They noticed something subtle. Every time they got faster, expectations adjusted. Every time they delivered more, the baseline moved. They weren't getting ahead. They were resetting the floor, so they stopped playing the output game. That's the first hinge. When machines compete on output, output stops being a moat. Think about calculators. Accountants didn't disappear when calculators arrived, but mental math stopped being valuable. The skill remained useful. The premium vanished. AI is doing that to cognitive work, writing, design, analysis, research. The work still exists. The edge doesn't. So the people who adapted asked a different question. If output is cheap, what stays expensive? And the answer was never speed. It was judgment, decision-making, context, accountability, the things that still carry consequences. Here's the first concrete shift they made. They moved closer to decisions, not titles, not promotions, decisions. They didn't try to be the best executor. They tried to be the person whose opinion changed what got executed. That's a massive difference. Execution scales with AI. Decision-making doesn't think of it like this. AI is a forklift. It moves more boxers with less effort, but it doesn't decide which boxes matter. The people who stayed relevant weren't lifting. They were choosing. Here's a real example. You used to prepare reports. You summarized data. You created slides. You delivered insights. AI made that faster. So instead of fighting it, you changed roles. You stopped owning the report. You owned the recommendation. You didn't send more pages. You sent fewer conclusions. And suddenly, your work became harder to replace. Not because it was complex, because it was accountable. That's the rehook most people miss. AI removes friction, but friction is what makes judgment valuable. The second shift people made was separating skills from leverage. This is critical. Most people think skills equals security. They don't. Leverage equals security. And AI is a leverage machine. So people who adapted stopped asking, what skills should I learn? And started asking, where does leverage live in my field? In some fields, leverage lives near clients. In others, it lives near capital. In others, it lives near regulation, trust, or relationships. They mapped that, then they moved toward it. Another analogy makes this obvious. Think about musicians. Recorded music became abundant. Live performance became scarce. The musicians who survived didn't record better. They toured. They moved closer to the scarce part of the system. AI makes output abundant, so leverage moves elsewhere. Here's another example. You worked in a role where your value came from producing documents. AI compressed that. Instead of competing, you moved upstream. You became the person who defined what the document needed to say. You spent less time producing, more time clarifying. Your output went down. Your influence went up. That's how people saved themselves without changing industries. Now, here's the second hinge. AI doesn't eliminate value. It relocates it. And people who chased value where it used to be always arrived late. The third thing people who adapted did differently was diversifying income before they needed to. Not hustling, not burnout, optionality. They didn't quit jobs. They reduced dependency. They added secondary income streams that didn't rely on pure output. Advisory roles, ownership, stakes, revenue sharing, royalties, equity participation, anything where value wasn't tied linearly to hours. Here's an analogy. Think of a stool. One leg breaks, you fall, 3 legs wobble, but you adjust. Most people rely on one income stream tied to time. AI weakens that leg. The people who adapted added another, not to get rich, to stay upright. Here's a practical example. You didn't leave your job. You added a small advisory role, low time commitment, high context. It didn't pay much at first, but it paid differently. It wasn't replaceable by AI because it depended on your understanding of a specific situation. When your main role stagnated, you weren't trapped. You had options. That's what optionality looks like in practice. Another rehook. AI punishes dependency, not ignorance, dependency. People who were dependent on selling time felt pressure first. People who owned pieces of systems felt it last. Now let's talk about what people did wrong, because this matters just as much. Some people tried to they chased every new tool, every update, every framework. They became incredibly capable and completely interchangeable, because when everyone has the same tools stop being differentiation. Others ignored AI entirely. They said it was hype. They waited. By the time they noticed change, expectations had already shifted, and catching up required urgency. Urgency is expensive. The people who adapted avoided both traps. They didn't race. They repositioned. Another analogy. Think about retail. When online shopping grew, some stores doubled down on inventory. Others became experiences. The ones who tried to stock better products lost. The ones who changed the relationship survived. AI forces the same choice: compete on output or change the relationship. Now let's get specific about what to do, not predictions. Behavior first. Stop optimizing only for efficiency. Efficiency without leverage makes you replaceable faster. Second, identify where decisions are made in your environment. Who decides priorities? Who allocates resources? Who signs off? Move closer to that. Third, reduce income dependency on a single output role. Not by quitting, by layering. Fourth, accept that productivity gains will not be shared automatically. Plan accordingly. That means saving more when you can. Reducing lifestyle inflation, building buffers, because AI compresses wages quietly, and quiet compression catches people off guard. Here's another analogy. Think about inflation. If prices spike overnight, people react. If prices rise slowly, people adapt until they can't. AI does the same to income, slow compression, no headlines. That's why preparation beats reaction. Now let's rehook again. Nothing I've described requires it doesn't require coding. It doesn't require becoming an AI expert. It requires understanding incentives. And incentives are the same everywhere. Machines scale output. Humans must scale judgment. That's the dividing line. Another example, you stopped measuring your value by how busy you were. You measured it by whether your absence mattered. If you were gone for a week, did decisions stall? Or did output just get rerouted? That question tells you everything. The people who adapted asked it early. Then they acted quietly, without drama. In the final part, we're going to address the hardest truth of all. Why this shift won't reverse. Why waiting for policy fixes won't save most people. And how people who understand this stop fearing AI entirely. Because once you move to the right side of the system, AI stops being a threat. It becomes leverage. By now, one thing should feel unavoidable. This shift is not temporary. AI is not a cycle. It's not a tool wave. And it's not something policy can simply roll back, because once productivity detaches from hiring, the economic contract changes permanently. And markets already know this. They're just not explaining it out loud. Here's the next hinge. AI doesn't reward companies that use AI. It rewards companies that replace costs with it. That difference matters. The winners are not the ones building flashy tools. They're the ones quietly removing labor from the value chain. And the stock market has been signaling this the entire time. Look at what's been rewarded. Companies with high margins, companies with scalable software, companies where one improvement multiplies across millions of users. What's been punished? Labor-heavy businesses, service models dependent on headcount growth, firms where productivity gains can't be captured by owners. This is not sentiment, it's structure. AI amplifies operating leverage, and markets price operating leverage ruthlessly. Here's a simple analogy. Think of a restaurant. If sales double, costs double, labor scales with demand, margins stay thin. Now, think of a software platform. If users double, costs barely move, margins explode. AI pushes more industries toward the second model and pushes workers toward the first. That's why equity behaves the way it does. Capital captures the upside, labor absorbs the adjustment. Now, here's the rehook most people miss. This doesn't mean buy all AI stocks. That's the surface story. The deeper reality is that AI separates companies into two groups: those that can internalize productivity gains and those that pass them through. The first group compounds. The second stagnates. So the people who adapted financially didn't chase headlines. They didn't buy whatever had AI in the earnings call. They asked a more uncomfortable question. If this company becomes dramatically more productive, who keeps the value? Shareholders, customers, employees? The answer determines everything. Here's a concrete example. You looked at a company where AI reduced costs internally, fewer hires, lower support expenses, faster development. Revenue didn't need to explode. Margins did. That's where equity value came from. You didn't need growth. You needed capture. Now compare that to a company using AI to compete harder. Prices fell, customers benefited, employees worked faster, but margins stayed flat. That stock didn't reward you. Same technology, different outcome. That's the split. And it mirrors what happens to people. AI rewards those who own systems. It punishes those who rent roles. Now let's bring this back to personal positioning, because people who saw this early didn't just change careers. They changed how they thought about money and exposure. They stopped assuming wages would keep pace with productivity. That's critical. For most of modern history, productivity gains flowed to labor. That link is broken. So the people who adapted saved differently. They invested differently. They stopped expecting income growth to solve everything. They built buffers. They increased savings rates when they could, not out of fear, out of realism. Here's an analogy. Think about inflation. If you expect prices to rise slowly forever, you behave differently. You lock in costs, you avoid variable exposure. AI creates wage inflation in reverse. Slow compression, so you prepare for it the same way. Now let's talk about what other people did wrong financially. Some people assumed wages would eventually catch up. They waited. They said, productivity always wins. They were right historically. They're wrong structurally. Others chased speculative names. They bought hype. They ignored fundamentals. They confused narrative with value capture. That ended badly. The people who navigated this best didn't speculate. They positioned. They favored businesses with pricing power, with control over distribution, with low marginal costs. They avoided models dependent on continuous hiring. They avoided companies where AI benefits customers more than owners. And importantly, they didn't because AI increases dispersion. Some firms win big, many get hollowed out. This is why indexes become misleading. They hide dispersion. They make everything look fine, while underneath, winners and losers diverge massively. Now let's talk about individuals again, because the same pattern applies. Some people kept selling output. They got faster. They got cheaper. They got replaceable. Others moved into ownership, not necessarily equity. Ownership of relationships, ownership of context, ownership of risk. They stopped being paid for tasks. They got paid for outcomes. Here's a practical example. You didn't take on more hours. You took on a revenue share. You accepted variability in exchange for leverage. I couldn't replace that because AI doesn't take responsibility. Now, here's another analogy. Think of pilots. Autopilot exists. Planes fly themselves most of the time. Pilots didn't disappear. Their role changed. They're there for judgment, for rare events, for accountability. That's where humans win. And that's where income survives. The same applies across fields. AI does the normal. Humans handle the exception. So the people who adapted positioned themselves where exceptions matter, where mistakes are costly, where context matters more than speed. Now here's the hardest truth. This shift won't be fixed politically because there's no clear villain. Companies are more productive. Consumers are happier. GDP looks fine. The pain is distributed quietly. So waiting for intervention is a losing strategy. The people who accepted that stopped arguing about fairness. They focused on survivability. They asked, how do I stay relevant in a system that values scale over labor? And then they acted another analogy. Think of farming. Mechanization didn't eliminate food. It eliminated farm jobs. Those who owned land survived. Those who rented labor didn't. AI is mechanization for cognition. And cognition was the last labor moat. Now, here's the final once you move to the right side of this shift, AI stops feeling threatening. It becomes a tool because you're no longer competing with it on output. You're using it to increase your leverage. You're not asking, how do I do more? You're asking, how do I matter more? That question changes everything. Let's bring this home. Most people will experience AI as pressure. More work, less reward, fewer options. A smaller group will experience it as amplification. Not because they're smarter, but because they moved before they were forced. They changed roles. They changed incentives. They changed exposure. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for certainty. They positioned quietly. And because of that, AI didn't hollow them out. It hollowed out the space around them. So here's the final payoff. I will not break the economy loudly. It will not announce itself. It will not create a single moment of collapse. It will simply change who benefits and who doesn't. Those who sell time will feel it first. Those who own systems will feel it last. And those who understand that difference early won't panic. They'll adapt, not dramatically, not publicly, but permanently. And in a quiet transition, permanence is the only advantage that matters.